In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro delves into the current economic landscape and the media's portrayal of Donald Trump's economic policies. He begins by referencing Milton Friedman's assertion that inflation is fundamentally a monetary phenomenon, contrasting it with the media's narrative that inflation will stem from Trump's economic strategies. Shapiro argues that this perspective is largely wishful thinking, aimed at undermining Trump's potential economic success. Shapiro notes that Trump is currently enjoying high approval ratings, with many Americans expressing satisfaction with his transition team's plans. This positive reception has prompted the media to shift their focus, suggesting that Trump's policies could lead to a new wave of inflation, dubbed TRUMPFLATION. The media's argument hinges on three main policies: tariffs, tax cuts, and mass deportations. Shapiro critiques this narrative, pointing out that the same media previously downplayed inflation concerns during Biden's presidency, despite the reality of rising prices. Shapiro elaborates on the implications of tariffs, explaining that while they are designed to protect domestic industries, they ultimately raise prices for consumers. He uses the example of steel tariffs to illustrate how tariffs benefit specific producers at the expense of broader consumer interests. However, he argues that Trump's approach to tariffs is more strategic than simply imposing them. It is about leveraging negotiations with other countries to achieve favorable outcomes for the U.S. economy. He highlights Trump's historical use of tariffs as a negotiating tool, particularly during the renegotiation of NAFTA, which resulted in the USMCA agreement. Shapiro emphasizes that the market has responded positively to Trump's economic proposals, suggesting that his policies may not lead to the inflationary pressures that critics predict. Shapiro also addresses the 2017 tax cuts, arguing that they did not lead to inflation, as some had feared. He contends that allowing individuals to keep more of their money encourages responsible spending and investment, contrasting this with government spending, which often leads to inflation without corresponding productivity gains. He asserts that tax cuts empower consumers and investors to make rational economic decisions, which is fundamentally different from government-driven inflation. The discussion then shifts to the potential impact of mass deportation on inflation. Shapiro expresses skepticism about the claim that deportations would lead to significant inflationary pressures, arguing that the relationship between labor supply and inflation is complex and not easily reduced to simple cause and effect scenarios. Shapiro warns that the real threat to inflation lies in the Federal Reserve's monetary policy, particularly if it continues to lower interest rates. He argues that the Fed's actions, combined with government spending, are the primary drivers of inflation, rather than Trump's economic policies. He emphasizes that Trump's administration will need to navigate these challenges carefully to avoid repeating the inflationary mistakes of the past. Transitioning to foreign policy, Shapiro discusses Israel's recent ceasefire agreement with Lebanon, which he attributes to the desire to move beyond the Biden administration. He explains that Israel's military successes against Hezbollah have been significant, and the ceasefire is a strategic move to regroup and prepare for potential future conflicts, particularly with Iran. Shapiro highlights Netanyahu's statements regarding Israel's military objectives and the importance of maintaining pressure on terrorist organizations. Shapiro critiques the media's portrayal of the ceasefire and the broader geopolitical landscape, arguing that they often misrepresent Israel's actions and motivations. He points out that the media's focus on humanitarian concerns often overlooks the complexities of the situation, including the role of Iran and its proxies in the region. He emphasizes that the Biden administration's approach to foreign policy has been detrimental to Israel's security and that a shift in leadership could lead to a more favorable environment for U.S.-Israel relations. The podcast also touches on the internal struggles within the Democratic Party, with Shapiro highlighting the challenges faced by figures like Kamala Harris and Michelle Obama. He notes that the party is grappling with its identity and messaging, particularly as it seeks to appeal to moderate voters. Shapiro suggests that the Democrats' failure to connect with the electorate could have significant implications for future elections.